Why no shotgun love out there? Why is the shotgun not more popular? Considering all the things that it can do and all the advantages that it has and its flexibility, why is it kind of pushed aside as a outdated or antiquated or many other things kind of gun when it's so good at so many things? That's, I think, what we're going to look at soberly and circumspectly today, hopefully, on gunfighter life. So saddle up for this episode, where we talk about guns, gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I'm blessed to serve you as host, first and foremost a Christian. God's gotten me through many things: military, law enforcement, competitive shooter, professional big game hunter and guide. Let's get into today's episode. Now, first off, I don't want this to be like the shotgun is the Ginsu knife. And if you're old enough, this is way back when I had TV. I don't know, the Ginsu knife may have been late 80s, early 90s. It was like one of the first real big things that was like an infomercial that was successful. It was like something you ordered and they tried to make it seem like it could do all the things. Now, I don't want this to be an infomercial for the shotgun. The shotgun does have drawbacks, and I'll start off with those. That way we're hopefully fair and honest here. But the shotgun has a limited range. You're talking just a regular smoothbore shotgun with decent sights, and if you actually pattern and sight in your gun, not just assume it's going to shoot somewhere because you really want it to, because you got a box of slugs at Walmart. But if you actually train with it and sight it in like you would a rifle, 150 yards is pretty doable for just a regular smoothbore shotgun. But it does have limited range, even compared to, just basic many other rifles. It has limited range. Something like a very old school basic lever action 30-30 is going to have more range than a shotgun. So it does have limited range. Also, they tend to be fairly heavy. 12 gauge, most 12 gauge shotguns are fairly heavy compared to a lot of other things. And the ammunition is heavy, round for round. It's going to weigh more than most other ammunition. But I don't think from my time in the gun world that that's why they're not so popular. I think a lot of that has to do with nonsensical type things. Like, they're not maybe as marketable and as cool as, combat fighting handguns or carbines with all the different accessories and all the different minutia. And let's be real, a lot of the gun industry is predicated on you buying that next thing with all the cool Cerakote and the fancy shiny stuff, and a lot of it's predicated on this new caliber is, 3% better than the caliber from last year, and you need this new caliber, or you're just not going to get that elk or that deer. The 30-06 to the 300 Win Mag to the 300 Wisdom, the 300 Winchester Short Mag to the 300 Rum, and the 12 gauge has been the 12 gauge for a long time, and it still pretty much is at the top of the heap. You're not really coming out with new gauges. I don't remember when the last time a new shotgun gauge came out, because they've pretty much been static for my lifetime. So it's hard to push guns like that. Also, they've been so good for so long. In fact, I think a lot of them have gotten worse as far as quality control goes. But a good Remington 870 from 50 years ago, as long as it wasn't left in a porta potty, is still an awesome shotgun. A good Mossberg 500 from 40 years ago is still a good solid shotgun. So you're not making money having people have to go out and buy more stuff all the time. Which again is, I think, a lot of what the gun market and gun industry is predicated on, which is fine. If you want to collect cool guns, there's nothing wrong with that. This is not gun collector life. This is gun fighter life. Nothing wrong with wanting the next cool gun. While there has been a lot of actual, I would say, real tangible benefits in the development of handguns in the past 50 years, not so much in the shotguns. We've had good, reliable pump action and semi-auto, the two top of the heap for combat and fighting and hunting shotguns, right? They've pretty much been around for, 100 years? When did the Browning Auto 5 come out? 1905. Well over 100 years ago. And it was a reliable semi-auto shotgun. They're still good shotguns. And they last a long time. They're rugged. They're reliable. If you're a hardcore competitive shooter, you can wear out a rifle barrel pretty fast. In a season. It's not unheard of. But shotguns will last lifetimes. So you don't have to go out and buy the next cool thing. And especially for the calibers, and there's no twist rate variation like when the whole big push was, if you've got a 1 in 9 twist, you're just antiquated. You got to get the 1 in 8, then you got to get the 1 in 7 for the AR if you want to be the cool guy and shoot the 77 grains. You don't really have to deal with that with the shotgun. Again, they've been good for a long time. Not that there's not been any innovation in the shotgun. The short shells are pretty cool. That's the biggest thing that comes to mind. But even those you don't need a new shotgun for. Unless your shotgun happens to be one that wouldn't run them and you really want to run them. And also, I'm going to be honest with this, they're not as fun to train with. I do the bulk of my training, the vast majority of my training, like my daily training, with a handgun. There's a good reason for that. The handgun is the gun that I have on me most of the time. It's a reason when I started out competition shooting, I started out in more precision rifle type disciplines. When I was a police officer, I was LAPD and I worked some other more specialized stuff. And I thought, I want to get back into competition shooting, but if I'm going to have a practical application, it's probably going to be the handgun that's most likely to get used because it's what's on me most of the time. Either as a civilian carrying, when I'm off duty, or when I'm on duty. It's the gun that I have most of the time. And the handgun is the hardest gun to master. It is, and it's the most perishable of the shooting skills. You really have to be on top of it. It's the hardest gun to master, the hardest gun to shoot effectively, and it's the hardest to stay on top of. And I've seen this. Didn't mention the bio, but I'm an FBI, handgun instructor. I'm of the 3-letter government agencies that I won't specify, all kinds of certifications, including advanced weapons certification instructor. I've taught at one of the biggest schools in this country for teaching people firearms. I still am technically one of their professional firearms instructors, although I don't live in the area. I've taught military, law enforcement, and I've seen this to be true, that if you're a really good handgun shooter, you can shoot most things really well. But the inverse is not true. You can be a really, really, really good rifle shooter, like an expert rifle shooter, literally, and be horrible with a handgun. I know because that was me at one point. I was gold medalist in rifle. And even as a police officer, I would say I was about average as a police officer with a handgun. And I thought that and that's not very good. Let's just be honest. I went to my first shooting competition and actually got disqualified. And even though I was a cop. And humble pie is good for all of us from time to time. But handguns are hard guns to master. I do the bulk of my training with that. And I think a lot of people do a lot of handgun training. They're fun to train on. They're easy to train on as far as the ranges and the equipment that you need. I think you train on them more. You shoot more ammo through them. And likewise, the rifle. Carbine classes are fun. It's, fun to shoot really fast, especially like a 223 AR, because they have very low recoil. They're easy to reload. You go through a 30-round magazine, you do a speed reload and put in a new 30-round magazine. Shotguns, to be honest, are not as fun. It's not super fun for me to shoot 20 slugs in a day. 20 rounds out of an AR is kind of just a warm-up. 20 slugs through a shotgun is borderline painful, right? So let's be honest, they're not as fun to train on. So I just said I was going to be real with you guys. You might think I'm a sissy, but 20 rounds of full power, like deep penetrator slugs out of a pump action 12 gauge in a short amount of time is not super fun, even though I love shooting. So those are some reasons, I think, why no shotgun love. Also, you don't really need to do all the crazy stuff to get you to spend a bunch more money on them. Just a decent pump action, not even, because semi-autos are good. I like semi-autos. I'm actually one of the few people I think that prefer them for a lot of things over a pump action. But to get a good semi-auto, generally you're going to spend quite a bit more. than for a good, reliable pump action. Let's talk about the pump action. For a good, reliable pump action shotgun, you're far under the cost of a good, reliable semi-auto handgun or a good, reliable even AR, even though they've come down a lot in price. You're well under that. And you don't need to do all the crazy astronaut gun stuff to them, right? You don't need IR, laser, illuminator. I've got 5 different sling attachment points and M-lock versus key mod. You know, you got to be cool. You're outdated if you have the wrong one. You don't really need that. Put a sling on it and a white light, and you're good. And let's just be honest with ourselves, men and tactical guys out there, and realize you're talking to one of them. Sometimes we just like to spend money on stuff, and we like to spend money on stuff that we like. And it's easier to spend money on like a Scar 17 and all the accessories than it is a shotgun. You can spend a lot more money. You can go down all kinds of rabbit holes if that's what you want to do. If your goal is to have a platform at which you throw money at to put cool accessories on, the AR or the Scar or many other things lend themselves easier to that than a shotgun, because a shotgun doesn't need much. But if you look at that pragmatically, you'd see an advantage to that. Shotgun doesn't need much. It's pretty awesome the way that it is. This is why I think the shotgun should get more love. So let's start transitioning to that. Nothing is as versatile as the shotgun. No small arm that a man can own is as versatile as a shotgun. Nothing else can you take a fat little quail, little natural protein bar, reliably out of the air time after time, and then take down a charging grizzly bear by changing ammunition. Nothing else can do that. Can be very good at hunting. Just a few species that come to mind: dove and quail and grouse and pheasant and duck and goose and turkey and coyote and deer, whitetail and mule deer and blacktail deer and elk and bear, and be a rock star at home defense as a truck gun. You also get a bunch of other specialty roles, again, because it's so flexible. You can open a door with it, you can breach with it, you can signal with it, you can have a less lethal option, you can have something that will stop a charging grizzly bear and something that won't. If there's some weird physical anomaly, you can shoot somebody with at fairly close range and not kill them if you want to go less lethal. A beanbag round or a rubber baton round or rubber buckshot. Nothing is that flexible. Nothing. And we go back to the range thing, and honestly, if you have an answer to this, let me know, because of all my experience and all the stuff that I've studied, which has been quite a bit for research for jobs. One of the things I didn't mention, because I'm trying to make the bio shorter, is that I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. That was our main job. And a lot of that, as me as the commander, a lot of that honestly was desk stuff. I did all the combat type stuff too, but I also did a lot of desk stuff, and a lot of that was research on actual real world active shooters and shootings and things like that. Find me any justifiable use of force by a civilian or by law enforcement, not by, and I'm talking about it would be justified if you were in that situation, not like federal 3-letter government agency sniper just had a blank check and could just shoot somebody because they had those orders, that was their rules of engagement. I'm talking about you. If you were in that situation, you would feel morally justified in taking that shooting past 150 yards. If you do your part, which is a smooth bore, I'm not even talking about the flexibility. You could put another barrel on, you could put a fully rifled barrel and shoot sabot slugs and stretch that out way farther. But just your regular smooth bore Walmart box of slugs and Walmart shotgun. If you do your part, you should be able to get decent hits if you experiment with different types of slugs and what your gun likes in general to 150 yards. So the range thing for me, for practical stuff, not a big deal. And also look at your average range for hunting all manner of things. Now, shotgun is already the go-to for much small game. But look at whatever is in your area. What's the average distance that a deer is shot at? And you're telling me you can't do that with a shotgun? You might not want to. You might want something else. But a shotgun is a fantastic tool. You may want a fancy rifle, but in most situations, you could probably take the deer with a shotgun slug, or even better with number 4 buck, one of my preferred loads. I mentioned I've been a professional big game hunter and guide, and I've been blessed to hunt all over this country. Whitetail on the East Coast and mule deer on the West Coast, and elk and all manner of exotic beast as a professional, PH and guide. And yeah, I usually carried a rifle. And sometimes I would take longer shots than the 150 yards. Sometimes my clients would take longer shots than the 150 yards. Here's the thing, if we're talking about practical hunting, if I wanted to, if I'm decent at spot and stalking, there's been a few times, I'm going to be honest, but there are very few times where I can't stalk within 150 yards of an animal. Sometimes terrain doesn't allow, or it's getting too dark and the laws don't allow, or whatever. But the vast majority of cases, if you're a decent stalker, you should be able to get within 150 yards. A lot of times within 75 yards before that animal knows you're there, if you're patient and know what you're doing. I know it's in vogue now to hunt off the tripod with rangefinders and all that stuff, and that stuff is fine. I'm all about getting more people hunting, and there are people that really like the gadgets and the widgets, and they really like the math of all that goes into that and everything, and I'm not taking that away from them. That's a skill and an art unto itself. But let's be real, you don't actually need that to hunt deer and elk, unless that's what you want to do. So from a pure performance and practicality standpoint, it's pretty good. And let's look at home defense, truck gun, things like that. There's nothing as good for home defense. People often ask me, what about home defense? Get a shotgun, man. Get a shotgun with buckshot and be done with it. I don't care how cool your combat handgun is. You're talking to somebody that's a several-time handgun champion in many different disciplines, however you want to quantify that. I love the handgun. I love training with the handgun. I love the handgun, but it's not as good a home defense weapon as a shotgun. It just isn't. There are some advantages in some certain situations where, a handgun is better. But in general, for a home defense gun, a shotgun with number 4 buck is a better option, and it's probably cheaper. I think people want to justify, I want this cool handgun. What if I got a Mark 23 and put a silencer on it and had a double stack 45 for my home defense handgun? When you could just get a way cheaper, by a factor of a quarter of that, decent pump action, or even semi-auto, and still be way cheaper than a Mark 23 or a FNX 45 or a Glock 21 or whatever your home defense ideal handgun would be. Way cheaper than that. Good, reliable, repeatable firepower shotgun with buckshot. It's a better option. It just is. If you want a really cool giant home defense handgun, I love combat handguns. I love them. But it's in general not as good, not as effective, not as easy to get hits on target quickly as a shotgun with buckshot. That's the right tool for the job in general. Why do people then say that AR-15 is the best for home defense? Usually because they love AR-15s, let's just be real. They were in the military, they were a Marine or a soldier, of which I was both, Marine and a soldier. But perhaps they didn't have a lot of gun background before that, and that's what they were issued, and that might be the only gun they're really super familiar with. So to them, that's the best gun for everything. To them, that's their Ginsu knife. That's what they have, that's what they know, and they want to justify that, and they'll come up with all kinds of reasons why. We'll talk about overpenetration and all those kind of things. And the AR-15, I would say, certainly is better if it's configured properly, with that caveat, for home defense than a handgun, but it's not as good, again, and probably costs way more than a shotgun with buckshot. You think all kinds of scenarios to justify it. And again, there are caveats where it might be better, but you're like, what about a hostage shot? Well, when I was LAPD, we trained to take hostage shots with buckshot. That was a thing that just standardly we trained on. If you know anything about how shotguns actually work, not like the movies where it just blows everybody away or it just spreads out super quick. Inside a house, you're probably looking at a fist-sized group. And if you know where your gun shoots because you actually train with it, you can easily take hostage shots at a distance of 5 yards. How long is your hostage shot going to be inside your house? If that even ever comes up, which is a very small portion of a scenario outside of a movie. Not saying it never happens, but if it does, it's likely to be close range. You're likely to be able to do it with a shotgun. I would submit your average shooter will be more capable, as long as they train a little bit with both, will be more capable of taking that shot with a shotgun than with a handgun. You're talking a fist-sized group. I'm going to be honest, a lot of people that don't shoot very often and train very often with a handgun have a hard time shooting a fist-sized group at close range anyway with a handgun. And unless people train a lot with an AR at close ranges because of the way the AR is configured and the buffer tube and the sights being way higher, the height over bore, you have to train. If you aim for the center of a bad guy's face at close range, you're not going to hit the center of a bad guy's face. Depending on where that hostage is, that can be a really bad deal. And it takes a lot of training to not put that red dot where you want to hit. Like, let's say you want to shoot him in the center of the face. You have to aim over the dude's head. That is a hard thing to do. And remember, under stress, unless you've done it a lot in repetition. And if that's not you, that might not be the best choice. That's just one such scenario. The whole over-penetration thing. An AR is a very high, fast velocity round, and it can break apart when it hits certain walls. It can, but it also cannot. It could also just do straight line penetration. Here's what I say about the over-penetration thing that gets discussed ad nausea. Any cartridge that's going to reliably put down a man bent on killing you or another human being, any cartridge that will reliably do that quickly is also going to penetrate many walls. Let me put it to you simply this way. I don't know how big you are as a person, but I doubt I can walk up to you and punch a hole through your chest. But I can walk up to most walls, residential walls, and punch a hole through the wall. Anything that's going to reliably stop a person is also going to go through probably several regular residential drywall walls. Worry about hitting your target. That's problem number one. Worry about an effective tool for the job. And even so, number 4 buck, not number 4 bird shot. That's completely different. Number 4 buck shot. It irks me when people get that confused, and I'm not recommending you use bird shot for home defense. Again, right tool for the job. I've seen people. Anyway, let's just say I've not been impressed with the performance of bird shot. It's for birds. Buckshot. Number 4 buck is not a crazy over-penetrator, and it's an amazing thing. Number 4 buck. It's not as popular as double-aught buck, I think, because that's what the military and police use is double-aught buck. But number 4 buck for a lot of things. It's one of my favorite go-to hunting loads, one of my favorite go-to defensive loads. Number 4 buck. Like you're talking 3-inch 41 pellets of number 4 buck. It's devastating. Now let's transition. I just talked about what law enforcement uses. I was a police officer. I mentioned I worked some more specialized assignments, and I've used this analogy many times, but I'll use it again. In my more specialized assignments, I had access to the armory. I had access to legit, I'm not exaggerating, I had access to full auto Tommy guns, Thompson submachine guns, 45 auto. I only ever took those out for fun, because let's be real, they're fun, but they're also heavy, pretty impractical as far as today's options go. But I also had access to like full auto M16s, and one of my favorites that I sometimes would take for missions, a Car 15, a full auto. It was like the very first predecessor to the M4, which I think maybe even be better than an M4 because it's lighter. But I had access to a full auto one of those. It was a good little carbine. It was actually really reliable. But most often, if I was going into a hostile environment and I was grabbing a long gun, even though I had all those other options, I was grabbing a Remington 870 Police Magnum with buckshot and slugs. Because I didn't care what looked cool on Instagram. In fact, Instagram I don't think existed then. Facebook may have. But I didn't care about that. I didn't care about what had the most widgets on it, the most IR lasers and the most night vision stuff and the biggest, longest magazine. What I could put a drum mag in. I didn't care about that because I knew from my training and experience that the most likely thing to keep me breathing if I encountered resistance, let's put it politely, was the shotgun with buckshot and slugs in most urban environments and most police things. Now, there were times where I was doing other missions where I would take that, full auto carbine. But the vast majority of the time, I grabbed the shotgun because it was the best tool for the job. If I was doing room clearing, it was the shotgun. And you might think, well, why don't Marines and soldiers generally use shotguns? Why do they use AR-15s or M16s and carbines? Well, because as a Marine infantryman, of which I was one, and a soldier, you're issued a rifle. And that rifle has to pretty much do the vast majority of things. You're issued a rifle, unless you're a machine gunner or something like that. But a general infantryman, an 11 Bravo or an 03 11, depending on Marine Corps, Army, you're issued a rifle. And whether you're on a battlefield and you have to engage an enemy at 500 meters as a Marine rifleman or 300 meters as an Army soldier, on a battlefield where you may have literal squads rushing at you of who knows, because you don't know, right, when you join what enemy you're going to fight. You're going to fight the Russians, you're going to fight the Chinese, you're going to fight jihad. You don't know. The military doesn't know. They give you a rifle that can do that stuff. And if you have to kick in doors with it, it'll do that too. Certainly kicked in my share of doors with a carbine. It will do that. It's not like, oh, you're going to kick in doors today. You're in Fallujah. You're in El Basra going to kick in doors. Well, let's issue you this other gun. That's not how that works. You have your rifle, period. Unless it breaks or some crazy thing. But when you look at more specialized units, yeah, they do use it. Like the Marine Corps does use a Benelli M4. If you're a more specialized guy and that's your thing. But that you're not talking about your average soldier. You're not talking about your average Marine infantryman. But if you're talking about more specialized units, they absolutely do use a shotgun. The military does use the Mossberg 590. They do use the Benelli M4 for that role because it's really good at it. But your average soldier, they don't, not because it's not the best, but because they're issued the one rifle. And the shotgun is not the tool that you want if you've got enemies in squads advancing on you, doing they see me, I'm down at 500 meters. Or you have, enemy radical Islamists bent on wanting to cut your head off with a dull blade at varying distances in the rocks of Afghanistan and Toyota Hiluxes rolling around. Yeah, for that you don't want a shotgun. But is that you? But for most things, again, as a police officer, as law enforcement, for most things, when I was grabbing a long gun, it was a shotgun, and by choice, because it was the best tool for the job. So I would say you be circumspect and look at that as well. I have said it, and I have said it many times. Unless there's some caveat, like I'm going crazy long distance on foot, in which case 22 makes a lot of sense. But if the peanut butter and chocolate hit the fan, I'm a prepper, a survivalist, I don't apologize for that. And I could have one long gun. I probably have a handgun, and I have a long gun. My one long gun would be the shotgun. I have in the past gone out. I have gone out in the wilderness, the Bible, and a gun to put meat on the table and survive. And that's in general a shotgun. Everybody thinks about, oh, deer, but if you're doing it for survival, a lot of times small game like grouse or ducks or things like that is a lot more attainable. And if you're on the move, a lot easier. And the shotgun's great for that, and the shotgun's also great for defense. Like right now I'm living in Alaska. There are both black bear and brown bear, coastal brown bear, in fairly high concentrations. There's also wolves on this island. And there's also grouse. Now, yeah, I have a rifle here with me. If I'm going out to hunt moose, I might get a long shot. I might get a 300-yard moose shot. So I might take the rifle. But if I wanted something to take pretty much anything, I'd take the shotgun. So I guess here's one of the main things I want to get across to you. Don't think that because the shotgun is not as Instagram-y, that it's not as, you can't dump as much money down the accessory hole, that you don't need the new hot caliber or new hot twist rate that comes out every 2 years, that there's not a big debate between Keylock and M-Mod, or the fact that you can get a really, really good shotgun for a couple of $100. that's good and reliable and will do pretty much all those things I talked about for a couple of $100. Don't turn your nose at it because it's easy to get, usually not banned, right? And almost, I can't think of any state where you can't have a common shotgun, even with places I just did one on like Canadian guns. Don't think because it's not banned and because it's affordable and because you don't have to spend a bunch of money on accessories that it's not a great, really good, flexible option. They are. They're phenomenal for a lot of things. So just consider that. Unless you just like to shoot ARs in competition or something, but if you're looking at it pragmatically, if you already have one or two ARs, you already have one or two handguns, and you don't have a decent, reasonable rate of fire, so pump or semi-auto shotgun, really, really look at it pragmatically and consider all that the shotgun does. I think it's kind of silly if the fact that you don't like it is that it doesn't cost $4,000 or that it doesn't cost $2,000, depending on what you think the ideal shotgun is, or the ideal carbine or combat fighting handgun. The fact that you could literally go to Walmart, well, depending on where you live, in a lot of places, you could literally go to Walmart and get like a Mossberg 500 with, and then also at Walmart buy a couple of cases of birdshot and train with it, a couple of different kinds of slugs to see which one your gun likes and shoots point of aim, point of impact, and several different buckshot loads, double aught, number 1, maybe some number 4. You can get number 6 shot. You can get all kinds of different shot. Pretty much hunt anything in North America. Be a great home defense gun. Be a great truck gun. Be a great putting meat on the table gun. And you can still be into it for less than a lot of other fighting carbines or combat handguns. Don't let that turn you off from it because it's affordable and available. That's just one of the pluses of it. Anyway, consider giving the shotgun a little bit more love. With that, I guess we'll start rolling up the episode. If you like this show, you want to consider supporting, there should be a Patreon link in the show notes. You get access to some pretty cool insider-only content there. Be part of the insider chat if you would like to be. Anyway, with that, we'll start rolling into the tactical tip of the day. Tactical tip of the day. If you're running a pump shotgun, depending on your environment, but if you're somewhere that's not prone to a lot of rust, a drier, more continental climate, you may consider dry lube, especially for like a truck shotgun. Because normal lube, oils, greases, things like that, they tend to attract dirt. And if you get a lot of dusty roads and things like that, you may consider dry lube for your pump shotgun. There are different companies that make it, but basically they're different companies, and read the instructions on the thing, but you basically spray it on and it dries, and it's a dry lubricant. And it still lubricates the metal parts, but it's not wet, so it doesn't attract that dirt. So depending on your environment, you may look at some dry lube if you're going to have that go-to shotgun for adverse conditions. That's your tactical tip of the day, your tactical verse of the day. Tactical verse of the day. Now, normally for a tactical verse of the day, by God's grace, hopefully I read the Bible multiple times a day, and I'll usually just go what's fresh on my mind, or honestly sometimes just whatever I turn to. But this one the other day, I was reading it and I thought, yeah, I need to make this one tactical verse of the day. This is Proverbs 8, starting in verse 22. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his way. Before his works of old, I have been established from everlasting. From the beginning, before there was ever an earth, when there was no depths, I was brought forth, when there was no fountains abounding with water, before the mountains were settled, before the hills, I was brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth or the fields, or the primal dust of the world. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. When he established the clouds above. When he strengthened the fountains of the deep. When he assigned
the sea its limit, so that the waters would not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then I was beside him as a master craftsman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in his inhabited world, and my delight was with the sons of men. Now, therefore, listen to me, my children, for blessed are those who keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and do not disdain it. Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my doors. For whoever finds me finds life, and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who sins against me wrongs his own soul. All those who hate me love death. End of Proverbs 8. Men, seek wisdom, seek understanding, and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of that. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed day.